Arm and Hammer baking soda isn't what you think it is. It is manufactured using the Solvay process, a chemical reaction that combines ammonia, carbon dioxide, and concentrated brine inside industrial reactors to produce sodium bicarbonate. Yes, baking soda is sodium bicarbonate, and when consumed in significant amounts, it neutralises stomach acid, increases sodium levels in the body, and can alter the body's acid-base balance. And that's why this matters, because Arm & Hammer has positioned this product as an all-in-one solution, both a heavy-duty household cleaner and something that can go into your body. That alone should make you start asking questions. People are not just baking with this powder. They're brushing their teeth with it, applying it to their skin, dissolving it in water, and drinking it for detox routines. In this video, I'm explaining why you should never use Arm & Hammer baking soda again, and what you should be looking for instead. Because once you understand the production process and the way it's positioned, you begin to see it differently. Let's expose it. Why you trust Arm & Hammer without question. Arm & Hammer did not become the default baking soda in UK kitchens by accident. The yellow box has been around for generations. It feels familiar, it feels traditional. When people think of baking soda, they picture that logo. That kind of brand recognition creates automatic trust, and that is the first problem. Most people do not compare baking soda brands. They do not research sourcing, they do not check production methods, they see the name, they assume consistency, and they put it in the trolley without thinking twice. Trust replaces verification. In many homes, Arm & Hammer is treated almost like a staple ingredient. It is used in cakes, scones, and pancakes. It is kept in the fridge to absorb odours. Some use it for cleaning, others use it for personal care or dissolve it in water for acid reflux. The more uses a product has, the more harmless it appears. But familiarity can create blind spots. When a product has been on shelves for decades, people assume it has stayed the same. They assume the sourcing has not changed. They assume the standards are fixed. They assume what their parents bought is identical to what they are buying today. Yet very few people ever stop and ask, has the production method changed over time? Has the sourcing shifted? Has the company updated its manufacturing without updating its transparency? Brand longevity does not automatically mean product consistency. And when something is trusted without question, it is rarely examined closely. That unquestioned trust is what allows deeper issues to go unnoticed. If you think blind trust is harmless, wait until you understand how the product is positioned for both food and heavy-duty cleaning at the same time. The next section explains why that should concern you. One box for cakes and cleaning. For cakes, Arm & Hammer markets its baking soda as a multi-purpose product. On one side, it is shown as a baking essential, something you add to cakes, scones, pancakes, and biscuits. On the other side, it is promoted for scrubbing sinks, cleaning ovens, deodorizing fridges, freshening carpets, and even tackling tough household stains. One powder, every job. And that sounds convenient. But here is the question most people never stop to ask. Should the same product that is safe enough to eat also be positioned for heavy-duty cleaning at the exact same purity standard? When a product is sold for food use only, it is expected to meet clear food-grade standards. That means stricter handling, controlled facilities, and clear testing procedures for contaminants. But when that same product is also marketed for cleaning drains and absorbing odours in shoes, the line becomes blurred. Arm & Hammer does not sell separate food-only and cleaning-only versions in UK supermarkets. It is the same yellow box, the same labelling, the same product description. There is no visible distinction that tells you this batch was specifically processed and tested exclusively for ingestion. You are expected to assume that because it says baking soda, it must automatically meet the highest standard for every possible use. But multi-purpose convenience can hide an important detail. Food standards and cleaning standards are not the same thing. When something is intended to enter your body, even occasionally, you deserve clarity on whether it is produced in facilities dedicated to food processing, whether it is tested to food-grade specifications, and whether it is treated differently from bulk industrial production. Yet the packaging does not clearly separate those categories. It simply says, pure baking soda. And that simplicity is what makes people stop questioning. If that alone does not concern you, the next section will, because it is about how this baking soda is actually produced and what that means for consistency. Natural or synthetic, Arm and Hammer won't tell you. When you pick up a box of Arm and Hammer baking soda, you probably assume it is one simple, natural ingredient that has always been made the same way. Most people never stop to think about where it actually comes from or how it is produced. They just see the brand name and assume it must be consistent. But baking soda can be produced in two very different ways. One method starts with natural mineral deposits found in the ground. The material is mined, cleaned, refined, and packaged. The other method does not begin in the earth at all. It is manufactured in chemical plants by combining ammonia, carbon dioxide, and concentrated salt brine inside large industrial systems. The baking soda forms during that reaction. Then it is filtered, dried, milled, and packed into boxes. In both cases, the final substance is still sodium bicarbonate. On paper, the chemical identity is the same, but the starting point and the production environment are not the same. Natural mining involves geological sources. Industrial manufacturing involves large-scale chemical processing and heavy equipment. Why does that matter? Because production methods can influence batch consistency, trace impurities, and how strictly the material is handled. Naturally sourced minerals can contain small traces of elements from the earth. Manufactured baking soda passes through industrial systems, which means quality control and purification standards become extremely important. This does not automatically mean one version is dangerous and the other is safe. The real issue is transparency. When you buy Arm and Hammer baking soda in the United Kingdom, the packaging does not clearly state whether your box was produced from natural mineral deposits or through synthetic industrial processing. It does not clearly explain the origin. It does not guide you through the sourcing. It simply presents the product as pure baking soda and expects you to trust the brand. That lack of clarity becomes more important when you consider how people actually use it. This is not just something added to cakes once in a while. Some people dissolve it in water and drink it for acid reflux. Some use it on their teeth. Some apply it to their skin. When a product is being used directly in or on the body, knowing how it was produced should not feel like a hidden detail. If you are not told whether it is natural or synthetically manufactured, you are buying without full information. And that raises a larger question about what else is not clearly explained on that yellow box. What the Arm and Hammer label doesn't say. Now slow down and actually look at the box. Turn it over. Read every side. Pay attention not just to what is printed there, but to what is missing. You will see the product name. You will see the word pure. You will see suggested uses for baking, cleaning, deodorizing, and multiple household purposes. But what you will not see is a clear explanation of origin. You will not see a statement that says whether this specific box was made from naturally mined mineral deposits or through industrial chemical manufacturing. You will not see a detailed sourcing declaration. You will not see a country of origin breakdown. You will not see batch-specific testing information printed clearly for the consumer. The word pure creates a powerful psychological effect. It sounds clean. It sounds simple. It sounds reassuring. But in this context, pure simply means that the product meets the definition of sodium bicarbonate. It does not automatically mean food grade only. It does not automatically mean pharmaceutical standard. It does not automatically mean independently tested for trace metals or contaminants. It simply describes the chemical identity. That is an important distinction. If something is being marketed for baking, for personal care, and even for home remedy uses like acid reflux, many consumers assume that high-level testing and food-specific standards are guaranteed. But the packaging does not clearly spell out what testing standards were applied, how often batches are checked, or what the acceptable contamination limits are. There is also no visible separation between a food-dedicated product line and a general household product. The same box is positioned for cakes and for cleaning drains. The same packaging serves both purposes. Yet the expectations for something you eat are very different from the expectations for something you use on surfaces. When you buy other food products in the UK, you often see origin statements, supplier information, or regulatory classifications. With baking soda, you are largely left with branding and minimal explanation. The trust comes from the logo, not from detailed disclosure. None of this automatically proves that something is wrong with the product, but it does mean you are not given the full picture. And when you are not given the full picture, you cannot make a fully informed decision. For a product that some people consume regularly, apply to their skin, or use in daily cooking, that level of silence should at least raise questions. Because if the label does not clearly explain sourcing, testing, or grade differentiation, then your confidence is coming from familiarity rather than transparency. The next section moves beyond the label and looks at what testing and contamination risks actually mean in practical terms. Heavy metals and contamination risks. Now let's slow this down and explain it properly, because this is where people either dismiss the issue or misunderstand it completely. Any product that originates from mineral sources in the earth can naturally contain trace elements. The ground does not produce perfectly isolated substances. Minerals form alongside other elements. That means when sodium bicarbonate is mined, it can carry very small traces of things like lead, arsenic, or other naturally occurring metals depending on the geological deposit. That does not automatically mean it is dangerous, but it does mean purification and testing matter. On the other side, when baking soda is manufactured in industrial facilities through chemical processing, it moves through large reactors, pipes, filtration systems, dryers, storage containers, and packaging equipment. Industrial systems require strict quality control because contamination can occur from machinery, storage conditions, or cross-handling if standards are not tightly controlled. So whether the baking soda is mined or manufactured, one thing is clear: contamination control depends on testing. And this is the part most people never see. When you buy bottled water, supplements, baby formula, or even certain health products, you often see references to laboratory testing, regulatory compliance, or purity standards. With a multi-purpose household baking soda product, those testing details are rarely printed clearly for the consumer. You are not shown heavy metal test summaries. You are not given contaminant thresholds. You are not provided with visible batch transparency. You are simply told it is baking soda. For someone who uses it once in a while in a cake, that might not seem urgent. But think about how people actually use this product today. Some dissolve it in water for reflux. Some use it daily as part of dental routines. Some apply it regularly to their skin. That turns it from a casual ingredient into something with repeated exposure. And when exposure becomes repeated, purity matters more. This is not about fear. It is about basic consumer awareness. If a product can enter your body, even in small amounts, you should at least know that it is consistently tested and that contamination limits are tightly monitored. The absence of visible transparency does not automatically mean something is wrong, but it does mean you are trusting internal standards that you cannot personally verify. And if this information is new to you, take a second and pause here, because the more people understand how everyday products are sourced and tested, the more power they regain as buyers. If you value clear, step-by-step investigations like this, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss the next breakdown. These details are rarely explained in plain language. Now let's move from laboratory-level concerns to something practical, something you can actually observe yourself at home. Moving on, we looked at quality differences you can test with your own eyes. Quality you can actually test at home. Now let's move away from factories and testing reports and bring this into your own kitchen. Because while you cannot run a laboratory analysis at home, you can pay attention to certain practical details that tell you something about how a powder has been processed and handled. Start with texture. Pour a small amount of Arm & Hammer baking soda into your hand. Rub it gently between your fingers. It should feel consistently fine, almost smooth, without noticeable grit or uneven granules. If you feel clumping, uneven particles, or slight grittiness, that can indicate inconsistent milling or moisture exposure during storage. Next, look at how it dissolves. Take a clear glass of water and stir in a teaspoon. It should dissolve evenly without leaving visible particles floating or settling heavily at the bottom. A small amount of residue is normal, but if you see uneven dispersal or cloudy clumps, that can suggest particle size inconsistency. Then pay attention to taste, carefully and only in a very small amount if you are used to doing so. Sodium bicarbonate naturally tastes alkaline and slightly salty. It should not have a harsh, metallic or chemical aftertaste. A sharp or lingering taste does not automatically mean contamination, but it can indicate impurities or inconsistent processing. Now, this is important. These home checks do not replace proper laboratory testing. They are not proof of contamination. They are simply awareness tools. They help you notice whether the product appears uniform, stable, and clean in handling. Most people never look this closely because they assume all baking soda is identical. But even subtle differences in texture and consistency can tell you something about quality control and storage conditions. If a product is marketed for both food and heavy cleaning, and it is mass-produced at industrial scale, then consistency from batch to batch becomes a key issue. The question is not whether you can prove something is wrong at home. The question is whether you are comfortable consuming something when you cannot clearly verify its sourcing, its testing, or its production route. And when small practical observations raise further questions. And if you think all of this is minor, let's bring it closer to home, to the reality of how it is sold in UK supermarkets and what that means for consistency. The UK supermarket reality. Now let's bring this back to where most people actually buy it. You are not ordering directly from a chemical supplier. You are not buying in bulk from a specialist food-grade manufacturer. You are picking it up during your weekly shop. Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's, maybe Amazon. It is sitting on the shelf next to flour, sugar, and other baking essentials, and because it is placed in the baking aisle, it feels automatically food-focused. But here is what most shoppers do not think about. Large supermarket chains do not manufacture baking soda themselves. They stock products supplied by large-scale manufacturers. Those manufacturers can adjust sourcing, change suppliers, or shift production facilities over time depending on cost, logistics, and demand. That doesn't automatically mean standards are lowered, but it does mean consistency depends entirely on internal corporate controls that are not clearly shown to you as the buyer. Arm & Hammer is a global brand. Global brands operate across multiple facilities. Production can vary by region, sourcing can shift depending on supply chains, and unless the packaging clearly explains origin and production route, you do not know whether your current box was produced under the exact same conditions as the last one you bought. Now add something else. Because baking soda is considered a basic commodity product, it does not receive the same scrutiny from consumers as supplements or health products. People rarely research it. They rarely compare brands. They rarely question testing standards. It is treated as simple and harmless by default, and that makes it easy to overlook the details. If you are using it occasionally in baking, you might accept that simplicity. But if you are dissolving it in water regularly or using it as part of personal care routines, supermarket convenience should not replace sourcing clarity. Price and familiarity often win over transparency. The yellow box is easy to find, it is affordable, it looks unchanged. That visual consistency reinforces trust. But visual consistency does not guarantee production consistency. When you buy something repeatedly without checking for changes, you are relying entirely on brand reputation rather than verified information. And that brings us to the final section, the core issue that ties all of this together. Why Arm & Hammer is not the same product. It used to be. This is where everything comes together. Arm & Hammer has built its reputation over more than a century. The yellow box looks almost identical to how it looked decades ago. The logo feels traditional, the branding feels steady. That visual consistency creates the impression that the product itself has remained unchanged. But branding can stay the same even when sourcing, suppliers, and production routes shift over time. Global manufacturing evolves, supply chains change, companies optimize for cost, scale, and efficiency. Production can move between facilities, raw material sources can vary, industrial processes can replace older methods. None of that is automatically illegal or deceptive. It is how modern large-scale manufacturing works. The issue is not that production methods may change. The issue is that the consumer is not clearly told when they do. If your parents bought a box of baking soda decades ago, there is no guarantee the sourcing route, facility, or supplier structure behind today's box is identical. Yet, the packaging gives the impression of continuity. It presents a timeless product with minimal explanation of how modern industrial processes now shape its production. At the same time, the same box is positioned for baking, cleaning, deodorizing, and personal care uses. There is no visible separation between a food-dedicated product line and a broader household-grade positioning. There is no simple front-facing statement clarifying production method, origin transparency, or clearly displayed testing standards. So what are you really buying? You are buying a brand name backed by history. You are buying familiarity. You are buying trust. But you are not being given detailed sourcing clarity in return. For many people, that may not feel urgent. But when something is entering your body, even occasionally, familiarity should not replace transparency. That does not mean panic. It does not mean fear, it means asking better questions. If a company expects you to trust a product for baking, personal care, and even internal use, then basic sourcing and testing transparency should not feel like too much to ask. And once you start asking those questions, you may decide that brand loyalty alone is not enough. What we recommend. Instead, if you are going to replace Arm & Hammer, the goal is not to avoid baking soda altogether. The goal is to choose a brand that is clearly positioned as a baking ingredient first, not a multi-purpose household cleaner. One reliable option in the United Kingdom is Dove's Farm. This brand focuses specifically on baking ingredients and is widely trusted in the baking community. Their product is sold as a food ingredient, not as a drain cleaner or carpet deodorizer. That distinction matters. It is usually priced between £1.50 and £2.50, depending on the retailer. Another strong option is Dr. Oetker, a long-established baking brand. Their product is clearly marketed for baking use and is sold in the baking aisle alongside other food ingredients. Pricing typically ranges from £1 to £2. If you are looking for a more premium, food-focused brand, Bob's Red Mill is available through selected UK retailers and online suppliers. Bob's Red Mill has a reputation for ingredient transparency and food-only positioning. It is more expensive, usually between £3 and £5, but it is clearly intended as a baking ingredient rather than a household cleaner. The key rule is simple. Choose brands that specialize in baking. Avoid products that blur the line between cakes and carpets. Look for packaging that clearly positions the product as a food ingredient rather than a multi-purpose cleaning powder. If you found this breakdown helpful, subscribe to the channel. We go through everyday products step by step so you can make informed choices instead of relying on branding alone.